Hello, I'm Mariana Cordier. Welcome to Montgomery Weekend Review. The Rural Maryland Council is interested in the crops, animals, and farming community that create the agricultural economy in the state. The challenge of climate change impacts all of Maryland. Charlotte Davis, the executive director of the council, will tell us what it means in rural areas. The chief of staff of a county council member has a demanding job to keep the office at top efficiency and to be ready to be aid to the council member in any emergency. Graciela Rivera Oven has the story of Craig Rice's chief of staff. Though 160,000 students attending Montgomery County Public Schools will soon be out of school for the summer, MCPS and other agencies have plans to meet the needs of these children. Jane DeWinter, who comments for this program, will explain these plans. SilverSneakers, a new Medicare program to provide exercise at gyms free of charge, will be a way for seniors to get the benefits of physical activity with little cost. Margaret Foster, the managing editor of The Beacon, will tell us all about it. So welcome back to the show. It's wonderful to have you. I always love the topics that we're always discussing about agriculture. It's so important.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to be here. And, the Rural Maryland Council, we focus a lot on agriculture, community development, and economic development. And, the effects of climate change that we're seeing is going to impact agriculture and what that means for our food, fiber, and fuel production for the future.
So that's not a topic typically, agriculture has everything to do with our climate and what's going on in the weather, but to actually have that two, headlines, climate change, agriculture, it's
well, I mean, the farmers are going to have to make some adjustments. We're going to see the growing seasons change from when they start to when they end, plus the effects of the weather that is having, particularly right now where it is incredibly wet and the farmers can't get out to fields just to plant. So they're going to have to make adjustments on what types of crops that they grow, and what that could potentially mean economically, and the potential losses and coverage that the government will probably have to make up. Things like the heat, when we see these extreme temperatures, that really stresses out the livestock. So that means loss of production, particularly in dairy. And that could be up into the $1.2 billion range. So
That's
it's going to
huge.
impact. And then trying to figure out, with crop loss, because we're seeing a lot of that coming up now. And that means losses in risk management, because we don't pay farmers to grow crops anymore, but we have a risk management strategy. So that could mean up to $4 billion in additional payouts in terms of covering some of these losses. And we're seeing more invasive pests. The big one right now is the spotted lanternfly that apparently attacks fruit crops, and it's a big orange spotted fly.
That sounds horrible. Do they bite?
I don't think they bite. They mainly bite fruit. So they
And then your crop is ruined.
Yeah, right. And there's more losses there. We do have problems now with gypsy moth, woolly adelgid, the emerald ash borer, which has pretty much wiped out most of our ash trees in the state.
Yep.
Had a couple of those. When we hear about climate change and the things we can do, short term, there's not much we can do for the agriculture, right? For the farmers. But what are short term things that farmers are thinking about to address these issues?
Mainly diversification, looking to see when they can grow, how they can grow. Are there strategies to perhaps move indoors? That's capital intensive to start growing indoors, but that is something, we advocate diversification mainly for resiliency purposes. We're in a trade war right now. Where are we going to get our food if we don't grow it? You know, do we want to purchase it from China or Brazil or somewhere else, or do we want to have that kind of capability ourselves to grow? We think there's room in the state of Maryland for agriculture, and just for the resiliency. We have a large market, we have a large population that everybody eats 3 times a day. Last I heard, everybody likes to eat.
I don't think you can look at any of us and say we don't like to eat.
Well, Charlotte, it's interesting you're talking about insects, because I think a lot of people think that when, you know, like sort of the insect, you know, what's available or what's out there changes, it's because of invasive species. But what is climate change? How does that impact?
Well, I don't
insects?
mean they won't die off in the wintertime. So yeah, we'll see probably more ticks, fleas, all kinds of, you know,
Right.
cockroaches, stuff that, you know, when the frost comes, that kills them off. But if we're not having a frost and a hard frost that kills them off, that's probably going to translate to more of these pests, more ticks, and probably more tick-related diseases.
More Lyme disease, definitely.
And Lyme disease is already a challenge because it's so hard to diagnose.
Well, not only that, but Montgomery County has a large population where the increase of Lyme disease has gone through the roof, and the reason is because we really didn't have a winter to kill the ticks. So
And we're seeing increases of things like babesiosis,
absolutely.
and Rocky Mountain spotted fever, and there is at the national level, I believe, a work group kind of looking at that. We were looking at it at the state level of what to do with tick-borne diseases.
It's amazing that we don't have a vaccine. We have it for animals, but not for adults.
Yep. You know.
So, any last thoughts you want to leave with the audience?
Well, I mean,
I'm a little depressed
Well,
here.
farmers are entrepreneurs, they're problem solvers, so they'll probably look at, you know, they're looking at their bottom line and they want to produce and they want to provide for the rest of the country. So they'll be, you know, they'll come up with solutions.
And I think it's important to support our local farmers.
Yes,
to make sure
absolutely.
that we go to our local farmers, you know, the markets that we have on Saturdays and all that to
'Cause the
to
Ag
go out
Reserve
of our
has-
way to actually support
Yeah,
them in that way.
you got the Ag Reserve here, and you've
Absolutely.
got some strong farmers, and pick your own. So we encourage. This is the time to get your. I think we're at the end of strawberries, but you know, it's,
too.
yeah, it's time for berry picking, and so please. And we have a number of farms that offer those types of activities. So go out and
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll keep that in mind. Thank you so much for being here with us. So now switching over to you, Grace, the Chief of Staff. It's not an easy job, is it?
Oh no, I think sometimes, you know, we forget about the people behind the scenes that makes everything happen and makes the wheels move, and they cut the deals, and they are really the firefighters, putting out a lot of fires. So
Every council member has a Chief
every
of Staff.
council member has a chief of staff. Today I'd like to talk about our dear friend Steve Goldstein, Dr. Goldstein, who bravely passed away on Memorial Day weekend after a fight with ALS.
And he was the Chief of Staff.
He was
for
the chief
Craig
of staff
Rice.
for my council member, District 2, Craig Rice, and he had been with Craig for over 16 years. And, you know, he was his confidant, he was his soundboard, if you will, which is pretty much the job of every chief of staff. They're the ones who keep you up to date on issues. They're the ones who give you a heads up of what, you know, what could be a conflict. And really, they do a lot of behind the scenes, the dealings of every day. And they're the kind of like unsung heroes, I think, of government employees. Because they carry a lot of that, you know, that work with them every day.
Well, those are the people that are the first front line that the public sees as well.
Absolutely, yeah, no, and I got to know Steve actually even before in this role. He was the head of Chestnut Lodge, I believe, for almost over 20 years, and I met him in this program almost 30 years ago, and he was just an amazing human being. And very giving, and made a lot of impact on people's lives, especially when it came to getting the support they needed when it came to mental health.
Well,
So
what a perfect person to do that, right?
No, yeah.
And a lot of chiefs of staffs heavily influence kind of what the member does. So what was his legacy
So,
with,
you know,
with
I think, you
council?
know, with Craig was also, and he still is a member of the health committee with HHS and so on. So supporting a lot of the programs that serve the community in the mental health. As you know, we stopped having the mental health direct providing years ago, but we still give a lot of funding to nonprofits who provide those services. And I think to ensure that that was always a priority and part of his agenda was very, very important. And he was also very big in supporting youth with issues and making sure that, you know, funding went that way and so on. So very supportive of the minority health initiatives. And so he definitely is going to be greatly missed, and left a legacy to be envied by many, because he not only was very politically savvy, but he also was very empathetic to the issues of many communities that did not have, per se, a political voice in the process.
Well, and I think also, you know, the longevity factor is really important for Chief of Staff. Every time I went in and I met with Steve, you know, I'd be going in and talking to him about youth issues, but you know, just the whole range of knowledge that he has and the history of, you know, other things. That's a really important quality to bring to a council member who might be, you know, new in the role. And
he was a fountain of information,
exactly,
and very trustworthy, which is also a very important thing to have, that ingredient, I think, for people to be able to trust you. And
just like a kind, a gentleman, really.
Exactly. Just a very genuine person. He was a dear friend. He actually encouraged me to learn baseball when my kids were little. And I used to, you know, he's like, Gracie, once you learn the game, trust me, you're going to love it. I was like, I was like, I don't know. People running around a square, he's like, it's a diamond. I was like, no, it's a diamond. But then he, you know, so I did. And my love for baseball really is, I thank Steve for pushing me to do it that way. And he was a huge Dodgers fan. And it turns out my middle guy became a huge Dodgers fan as well. But he was just a very complete person. And when you spoke with him, you felt, you know, listened to, and he was very responsive.
And what is Craig gonna do? Because that's big shoes to fill.
Those are big shoes to fill. Yeah. So right now we're all supporting Craig. I think, you know, not only did he lose his chief of staff, but he lost his best friend.
Right.
And that's you know, and to a disease that Steve did not let that disease own him. He owned the disease. He fought to, you know, I saw him a week before he passed away, and he did it with dignity. You know, he didn't want anybody feeling pity or sorry for himself. And so that's, you know, we'll see how that goes. But I think, you know, he lost his chief of staff. At the same token, he lost his best friend, and that's
super
hard
tough.
to do.
That is very difficult. Well, we wish Mr. Rice all the best in the world, and to his family as well. We have to take a break. Be right back.
Mom, can we get some ice cream? Please, Mom, please.
No, we're having dinner soon.
Please.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of children in foster care who will take you just as you are.
In the small town of Elmira, New York, a boy was born into an all-American family. The odds of him achieving his dream in the fashion industry? 1 in 23 million. The odds of having a child diagnosed with autism? 1 in 88. I am Tommy Hilfiger, and my family is affected by autism. Learn more at autismspeaks.org/signs.
For those dealing with the daily struggles of caring for a loved one, we hear you. That's why AARP created a community with experts and other caregivers to help us better care for ourselves and the ones we love.
Getting closer to nature can get you closer to your family. Go to discovertheforest.org.
And we're back. Jane, thank you for coming to the show to talk to us about summer. It's almost here.
Summer is good. Summer school, not so much.
So what's going on with Montgomery County Public Schools?
Well, Montgomery County Public Schools has a number of programs, summer school programs, to meet a variety of needs, probably not the needs of every single child in the county. There's I mean, just volume-wise, et cetera. Elementary programs, there are 3 different elementary programs that are available for kids who attend Title I schools, and that's actually a pretty extensive thing.
So remind us, what are Title I
Title I
schools?
schools are schools that get additional federal funds under the Title I program because of their high rates of poverty.
Gotcha.
So when we're talking Title I schools, we're talking about the schools that have the highest percentages of kids who are eligible for free and reduced lunch. And so we're talking about 70, 80, even over 90% of the kids could receive free and reduced lunch. So there's just regular summer school at 23 Title I schools. There's also a program that's called ELO, Extended Learning Opportunity STEP, which is that's by invitation. That's to bring in kids, traditionally disadvantaged kids, and give them acceleration. And so this is part of the school system's effort to kind of make more kids who are either poor or in a racial minority have the exposure to enrichment so that they could go to magnets or have, highly challenged curriculum. And then there's also summer school for kids who need kind of a catch-up and maybe are below where they should be academically. So those are 3. They're all pretty much at the same, they're all at Title I schools, but there are going to be 3, some schools will have 3 sort of separate cohorts of kids.
And this is all because in the summertime we forget what we learned the year before.
Right. I mean, this is all to combat, well, not all, but to combat what's called summer slide, which is basically kids lose a lot of knowledge, just things that they were memorized, whatever, over the summer. And so you come back and now every teacher knows that it might be, a whole month to get your kids back up to speed. And it is true that kids who don't live in a household where parents speaking English, don't live in a household where there's a lot of books or other resources, and maybe aren't in the most enriching daycare program or, somebody, and that also could be any child out there whose summer program consists of an iPad, 24/7. So these programs speak to, trying to keep kids engaged and
But
learning.
there's things that parents can do if your child is not in summer school to help them avoid sliding back, right?
Yes, there's plenty. Their library in the county has a lot of free programs, and being the library, many of them revolve around reading, but there's incentive programs at all the local libraries and things you can take your kids to.
What are other activities that parents may not think might help them with their kids and learning? That's everyday things that are free that they can do to help.
Right. Well, I mean, it's harder if you're working because you may not have this, but I mean, Washington, D.C. is unique in the whole country where most museums are free. Take your kids downtown, take them to museums, other things you can do. I mean, people stop reading to their kids when they're, you know, once the kid learns to read. But reading to your kids still when they're older is great, and it just kind of encourages the kids to read. So, and read yourself. So reading.
And cooking. When we were talking back in the game room, you had mentioned how cooking actually involves math. You know,
Right,
with
cooking involves math,
measurements
well, measurement, and then other things. Scrabble is language arts, but it's also math because you're supposed to add those points up. And things like Yahtzee, the dice game, and all that, those things are math. So there's tons of things that are everyday things that just reinforce those skills. And yeah, those don't. Well, I mean, you know, Yahtzee, you just need to have a pad of Yahtzee score things and 5 dice. It's not expensive. The recreation department has a lot of programs. Those are all fee-based.
How do you get the kids to want to do it? Because mine, they'd be like, oh, summer school, no way. So
You got 15 seconds.
Right, well, summer school. Well, yeah, I mean, bribery maybe.
Get the friends to go too.
Right. I mean, the one thing about the summer school for elementary kids, there's bus transportation. It's a 6.5 hour
I think
day.
she was talking for older kids.
Oh,
more
older
like
kids,
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
on that note, we're going to have to come back and have that discussion.
Yeah, I would still say bribery.
Bribery works, folks. It always does. All right. Well, now we're going to talk about the stories in the Beacon, which is always exciting. Thank you so much for coming on the show,
you.
Margaret. I know this is your first time. Welcome.
Thank you, thank you.
So, what do you have for us this month in the Beacon?
So the June issue of the Beacon, our cover story is about a program called SilverSneakers, which is for folks who are 65 or better, as they say. You can go to your local gym and have a gym membership for free.
Now that is amazing because
how does
I'm
that
just
work?
thinking, which gym can I
Yeah.
get?
Many gyms in the area participate. YMCAs, fancy gyms, and it's free. It's Medicare pays for it. So
That's awesome. So obviously the story that you were telling us in the back was amazing about a woman going to a gym in DuPont Circle.
yes,
Why don't
this
you
was
tell
so
our
cute.
audience?
She goes to the gym every day, a little gym in DuPont Circle, and one day the guy at the front desk looked up her birthday and he said, "Oh my gosh, this woman's in her 70s and she doesn't look it because she's here exercising for an hour a day." So it's a fountain of youth.
Yeah, no, definitely. Stuart is always, Rosenthal, who's the editor, is always telling us exercise is super duper important
think
for
it's true.
your health.
I have an uncle and an aunt who go to the gym. So should they check with their
Yes,
gym to see?
they should.
And they will be able to.
But is
see
it
to them?
anybody on Medicare or is it income?
Anybody
qualified?
over 65. And not a lot of people know about it, and not a lot
Yeah.
of people are
I
using
never heard of it. That's why I was asking.
You save
that, so-
$100 a month or $150.
Yeah.
I mean, those gym memberships are expensive.
Yeah, especially
Yeah.
when people are on fixed incomes. That makes a difference of going or not going for some folks.
And they have special classes tailored to SilverSneakers folks, so you can lift weights while you're in a chair, and it's not boot camp, trust me.
Well, I'm not 65 and I could probably do boot camp, but I don't, which is bad. But so, what other stories do you have for the Beacon?
We
this
picked
month?
up a neat story about zombie cells. So
Zombie cells.
scientists are studying why we age, and they've discovered that some cells, when they encounter a stress like a virus, they just shut down and become zombies, and they start kind of converting their friends into zombies too. And the more cells you have, the more rapidly you age, and the more vulnerable you are to Alzheimer's. So scientists hope, and have actually been experimenting, finding a drug to kill the zombies, like in The Walking Dead, with machetes. And
Yeah, I'm still stuck on the word zombie because
I
I'm
know.
thinking, okay, so does this mean at one point in time I'm
But
going
if
to
you-
eat my neighbor?
If you think about it, that really makes
It
sense.
does make sense,
It totally makes sense, especially with people with Alzheimer's and so on, because sometimes you wonder. You kind of know in your gut that there's a lot of stress factors that probably, so that's why like the whole exercise thing and the whole
It
eating
wakes
well.
them up.
Yeah.
So are those cells that are turning into zombies, are those in your brain or are they all over your body?
It's all throughout your body, and they're called senescent cells, so sleeping cells.
Okay.
But there was one big study, and there are going to be more to come. It's going to be
That's a
exciting.
great discovery. If it's a discovery and a study to see how to improve that would be awesome. What about travel? You guys always have great travel tips.
Yes, we have a great story about South Beach in Miami. So it's the Art Deco district and museums and people watching. And we also have this very beautiful story by a writer who writes for National Geographic as well. He calls himself the Adventure Geezer. And he's intrepid. And in this case, he's been to Alaska, kayaking in Alaska.
Wow.
And in this case, he went on this pilgrimage in Italy. He chose the easy hike.
Oh,
it wasn't easy at all.
yeah.
The way he put it is, pilgrimages are, suffering leads to enlightenment. And he said there were plenty of opportunities for enlightenment on this trip. It's a really well-written piece. It's really nice.
Great. Anything else that's going on in the Beacon?
But I just was going to say, like Florida, everybody thinks spring break is for young people and, kids in their late teens, early 20s. But there's a lot to do.
It's very diverse, too.
But in that area.
Everybody fits in.
Miami,
Yeah.
yes, I think so.
And you don't have to be fluent in Spanish to go.
No, you don't. Actually, it was wonderful. And the art, I think if you like art, you're missing if you haven't been to Miami lately, or Miami Beach, because the murals, the Art Deco, even Little Havana, it's just fun.
And a lot of people fought to save those buildings in that
absolutely,
historic district.
And it's just a very welcoming. I don't know how it is to live there, but to visit, it's definitely worth it.
Well, it's I think the great combination of the art, the warm weather, the music. I always have a great time when I go down there dancing. And the food. I think the food is fantastic. Although I guess I'll have to go to the gym afterwards.
Yeah, so those zombie cells don't.
Yeah,
take
the
over.
zombie cells. I think I have quite a few zombie cells. But thank you so much for coming on the show with the stories, and I hope we'll see you again.
Thanks.
All right, so thank you all for joining me this week, and thank you for joining all of us for this week's edition of Montgomery Weekend Review. I'm Mariana Cordier. Please join us next week at the same time.